Assalamu alaikum everybody. Welcome back to my channel Rapid Revision. Today's video is about a data response question from May-June 2024, paper 2 variant 1. This is from O-level economics, and this is basically from O-level and IGCSE Economics. And this is a compulsory question that the students have to solve in every paper. It's also based on a particular country and anything related to economics about that particular country. So in this case, it's about a country in Central America. We'll just read the data response together. So they've given you a Nicaragua fact file, which tells you a lot of things about Nicaragua's economy. One is population. They've given you labor force. They've given you the rate of unemployment in percentage. 4.8% is the unemployment rate. They've given you the economic growth rate, that is negative 4.3%, which means output is falling. Agricultural exports as a percentage of total exports is 60%, which means that Nicaragua highly relies on agriculture for their output and for their exports. So then they are saying here, Nicaragua is the largest country in Central America. It has a large agricultural sector. So they have told you that they depend on agriculture, with one of its main exports being coffee. It has been estimated that a 10% change in price of coffee will cause a 3% change in quantity of coffee demanded, which means, like, I can see that there is a very important formula that actually I just got reminded of is the formula for price elasticity of demand, because this percentage change in price, 10% percentage change in price, will cause a 3% change in quantity of coffee demanded. And I can tell you that in this case, PED, price elasticity of demand, will be less than 1, because obviously a 10% change in price causes only 3% change in quantity demanded. So once when you put this in the formula, so 3 divided by 10 will give you 0.3. 0.3 is your PED in this case, and it can be negative 0.3. So if your price is increasing by 10%, your quantity demanded is falling by 3%. So negative 0.3 is my answer in this case. PED always has this negative in the answer because of the relationship of price and quantity demanded. The relationship of price and quantity demanded is an inverse relationship. So whenever the price increases, quantity demanded falls. Whenever the price decreases, the quantity demanded rises. So there's this negative is always there in the PED, in the answer for PED. But what you need to know is that for the analysis, you have to ignore the negative. You will only call this as less than 1, which is, it is less than 1, that is 0.3 in this case. And in one of the parts of this question, they have asked you to actually calculate PED for coffee in this case. They are saying the country's agricultural output, including coffee, is often affected by natural disasters, including droughts and earthquakes. So droughts and earthquakes actually affect the agricultural output of Nicaragua. Then they are saying Nicaragua is the country with the lowest GDP per head in Central America. Wages are particularly low in rural areas of the country. There is high degree of income inequality, and firms tend to earn lower profits than in any other Central American countries. The number of Nicaraguans who are willing and able to work but could not find a job increased as calculated by both the claimant count and the labor force survey in 2020. The claimant count in this case would be that how many people actually go up to government authorities and claim unemployment benefits. That is basically going to tell the Nicaraguan government that how many people are actually unemployed in this country. And what they are telling you here is that the unemployment has increased over time in Nicaragua. Then they are saying the purchasing power of Nicaraguan consumers fell in 2020 as prices rose by more than incomes. So that means incomes are not rising as much as the prices are rising. So the consumers are becoming worse off over time because of inflation. Then they're saying, however, the country's currency, the Cordoba, was still generally acceptable. and it continued to act as a medium of exchange and store of value. Medium of exchange and store of value are two functions of money. So there are four functions of money in economics. One is medium of exchange, then it is store of value, then one of it is unit of account, and the fourth one is standard for deferred payment, which the students must know for their economics exam. But here they are talking about these two, medium of exchange and store of value, and they are also asking a question on this in the questions that are just coming up. Then they're saying Nicaragua's future economic performance will be influenced by a number of factors. These include the proportion of labor force employed in agriculture, the size of the country's firms, and what the country produces. Table 1.1 shows the percentage of labor force employed in agriculture and GDP per head in selected countries in 2020. So in this table, table 1.1, they have given you the percentage of labor force employed in agriculture and GDP per head in selected countries in 2020. They've given you a list of countries. There are 6 countries listed here. And then if you look at the values here, I can tell with my, okay, you can also tell this by looking at the table that the lower the percentage of employment in agriculture, the higher the GDP per head. I can tell this by looking at a few countries like Bahamas has a pretty low percentage of employment in agriculture and their GDP per head is the highest. So the lowest percentage of employment in agriculture is in Bahamas and the GDP per head is the highest in Bahamas. Then they are saying there is a question related to table 1.1 and in any data response they'll give you a graph or a table and they will give you a question related to it. So you need to be prepared for that how we actually solve these kind of questions. Then they are saying Nicaraguan firms tend to be relatively small. These firms often get to know their individual customers' requirements, but many are not large enough to benefit from economies of scale. They have given you one advantage of being a small firm and one disadvantage of being a small firm. One advantage of being a small firm is it's easier to get to know your customers, to get to know your customers' requirements, to actually respond according to what the customers need and want. And being a small firm, the disadvantage for it is that you don't benefit from economies of scale because obviously economies of scale by definition what economies of scale means is that when a firm becomes large, that means they are producing a greater number of output, a huge number of output, then they get the benefits of economies of scale. And in economics there are 5 types of economies of scale. Number one is internal economies of scale. Number one is bulk buying. Number two is financial economies. Number three is marketing economies. Number four is risk bearing economies, and then there's technical economies. So all these 5 you benefit from it. A business benefits from this only and only if they are large enough. And the advantage of it is that the average cost of production, so the total cost is now split on a greater number of units, which means that the average cost, that is cost per unit, goes down, and that is basically that can be passed down to consumers in the form of lower prices. Then they're saying here in recent years there has been a boom in coffee shops in Nicaragua, which means that a lot of coffee shops have been opening recently in Nicaragua. Then they're saying between 2015 and 2020 the number of coffee shops more than doubled in the country. These shops differentiate themselves through their customer service and the quality of coffee they serve. Then they're saying Nicaragua is world's 12th largest producer of coffee. Global coffee consumption continues to increase. This trend may increase Nicaragua's coffee output and export. So global consumption of coffee, basically globally, a lot of consumers have been purchasing coffee from Nicaragua. So that means if global consumption of coffee will increase, the exports of Nicaragua will increase, and that will also lead to a lot of benefits for Nicaragua, like the economic growth will increase, GDP will increase, also employment will increase as a result of global coffee consumption increasing. Okay, so now we move on to the questions. You basically have to answer all the parts of this these questions. Sorry, you need to answer all the parts of this question, A to H. Then they're saying also refer to the source material in your answer. So you need to refer to the data response in your answer. They're saying here calculate the price elasticity of demand for coffee, which I calculated when I actually read the data response as well, but we'll still do it again. The PED formula is PED is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded, percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. So they actually said in the question that a 10%, let's say there is a 10% rise in the price of coffee, that will lead to a 3% decrease in the quantity demanded for coffee. That means our PED will be 0.3, negative 0.3. Negative will stay there. We need to ignore it for the analysis. This is an inelastic demand. So in demand for coffee is basically inelastic. Okay. Then they are saying identify two rewards to factors of production in Nicaragua. You will need to look at the data response to actually identify two rewards to factors of production. So there are four factors of production in economics, and there are four rewards of factors of production. Land, there is rent for land, then there is uh, wages for labor, then we have interest for capital, and then we have profit for enterprise. But here we have wages mentioned in my data response here, wages, and then they're also talking about profits of firms in Nicaragua. So that means there are two factors of production rewards here which are mentioned in the data response. Rent and interest is not mentioned in the data response. So you need to write only those which are mentioned in the data response. So I'll write here part B will be wages and uh, wages, and then there will be profits. So here, because they are saying identify is a command word which actually requires you to write points only. They don't require you to write explanations. Or even if they say state is another word, STATE, state also requires you to write in points, not give explanations for your answers. Okay, part C of this question says explain one way in which unemployment is measured. They have mentioned in the data response that unemployment is basically calculated by both the claimant count and the labor force survey in 2020. So you can pick any of these and explain. So if I pick the claimant count, so I'll write here that unemployment is measured by the claimant count. The unemployment is in Nicaragua is measured by the claimant count. The claimant count is the number of people claiming unemployment benefits from the government, claiming unemployment benefits from the government. So in this case, also you can write about the labor force survey in 2020, which in the explanation you can say that the labor force survey is one survey which actually attempts to ask the people and ask everybody if they have a job or no. In the case of the labor force survey, whoever is actually attempting the survey will also mention if they have a job or no in that labor force survey. So in that way, the government will also know that how many people are without a job in Nicaragua. So the next part here says analyze. Okay, part D says explain two functions of money in Nicaragua. So when we were reading this data response, I mentioned that there are four functions of money, but they have mentioned two functions of money in Nicaragua. So you need to explain these two only. So number one is that money is a medium of exchange. So what you need to write here is that you will write here for part D, you will write money is a medium of exchange. Nicaragua's currency, Cordoba, still acts still is generally acceptable in exchange of goods and services. Also, money acts as a store of value. Money acts as a store of value in Nicaragua. Money can be saved or stored for future purchases of goods and services. However, money is a poor store of value in times of inflation. However, money is a poor store of value in times of inflation, which they also have mentioned somewhere in the data response that the prices have been rising in Nicaragua. Because of prices rising, the thing about money being a store of value is that when prices rise very rapidly, money is a poor store of value. So rather, there are other financial assets which can be better store of value as compared to money. In case of that, those countries where prices are rising very rapidly, gold can be a good better store of value as compared to money. Or it can be any other deposit, bank account, deposit account, or something that conserves the value of money and increases, basically gives a profit to a customer, rather than just money keep, like if you keep money idle, what happens is that it loses its value because of inflation. Because prices are rising, everything is becoming more expensive. So what 100 rupees can buy today, can 100 rupees cannot buy the same number of things after 1 year. Okay, so the next part, that is part E, says here, analyze the relationship between the percentage of labor force employed in agriculture and GDP per head. We talked about this while I read the data response. They've given you this table and they've given you these countries here, and these are 6 countries and their data. So the data here tells you that labor force employed in agriculture, so the percentage of labor force employed in agriculture and GDP per head. And I told you guys that the general relationship of this table tells me that the higher the percentage of labor force employed in agriculture, the lower the GDP per head, and the lower the percentage of labor force employed in agriculture, the higher the GDP per head. And this is basically an inverse relationship. I can prove this by mentioning that Bahamas is a country which has 3% of labor force employed in agriculture, and their GDP per head is the highest. Uh, Similarly, Barbados is another country, has 10% of labor force employed in agriculture and has the second highest GDP per head here. Costa Rica here has 14% labor force employed in agriculture and has the third highest GDP per head in this data. However, there are 2 countries which are exceptions in this case, which I'll mention in a bit. But what you guys need to do is that you need to first write about how to basically manage when when you have to write an answer for such a question. What you guys need to do is that first, basically, I'll just tell you the points. First, tell what the general relationship here in the table is. So, general relationship, you guys need to tell. So general relationship basically between the percentage of labor force employed in agriculture with the GDP per head. That is the general relationship shown in the table. Then what you need to write is about, you need to write about the countries that comply with the relationship. So like I told you, Bahamas complies with the relationship, Barbados complies with the relationship, Costa Rica complies with the relationship, and then talk about the exceptions in this case. So you can tell about 2 exceptions in this case, which is Dominica and Nicaragua. You can tell, okay, you can say Dominica has the highest percentage of labor force employed in agriculture, but they have the second highest GDP per head, that is $7,004 GDP per head. However, Nicaragua has the second highest percentage of labor force employed in agriculture, but their GDP per head is the lowest. So you guys can compare both of them and write it as exceptions. So you need to talk about, okay, general relationship, then you talk about the countries that comply with the relationship. So the countries that comply with the relationship, The third thing you need to mention is you need to write it in paragraphs. I'm just telling you how to go about this question, and this basically applies to any data response, because there's always one question based on a graph or a table in any data response. But the third thing you need to write is that you need to write what countries are which countries are exceptions. So in this case, exceptions are Nicaragua and Dominica. Then you need to talk about the reason of the relationship. So why is this relationship true, that the higher the percentage of labor force employed in agriculture, the lower the GDP per head. The lower the labor force employed in lower percentage, the lower the percentage of labor force employed in agriculture, the higher the GDP per head. You can say that agriculture basically produces and sells raw products, and the other sectors, that is the secondary sector and the tertiary sector, they basically give value addition. They basically give their customers value added items, and value added items are sold at a higher price. Of course, countries which highly rely on agriculture, they are not able to earn as much revenue, because agriculture the products are the products are raw. So a value added product as compared to a raw product will not gain as much revenue as much as a value added product will. That is why also the people who are employed in agriculture are normally they haven't spent a lot of years in education, because of which what they are paid is pretty low as compared to people who are in tertiary sectors or secondary sector. Tertiary sectors Tertiary sector jobs are quite high paid because of the number of years in education. However, agricultural sector jobs don't require a lot of years in education. That is why they are low paid jobs. So that's it. You give the reason for the relationship, and then your answer is done. This is pretty simple. You need to look at the table and talk about the general relationship first, but understand the numbers and then talk about the general relationship. So general relationship is what you need to identify. Like in this question, we identified that the relationship between the percentage of labor force employed in agriculture and GDP per head is an inverse relationship. Okay, so the next part here says analyze using a demand and supply diagram how a drought could affect the market for coffee. They have given you this question for 5 marks. So normally, whenever they ask you to make a graph in your O level economics exam, the maximum marks for the graph is 4 marks, and 1 mark here is for the analysis that you need to write below your diagram, and you need to tell what is happening in the diagram. So what they asked you, that how a drought is a natural one of the natural disasters. It's because of lack of water. So basically it's shortage of water. So drought basically affects the crops in terms of the number of output that is being produced. So drought will basically reduce the number of output, the output of coffee in this case, and it'll reduce the output of coffee. So therefore, the supply curve will be affected. The demand curve will not be affected. I mean, there will be no shift in the demand curve, but there will be a shift in the supply curve. However, there will be something in the quantity. Basically, the demand will also contract, but I'll show you on this on the graph. So part F here, you need to make a demand and supply diagram. So there will be a y-axis that is that is going to be price, and the x-axis is going to be quantity, and you need to basically make the demand curve that is a downward sloping demand curve, and you need to make the supply curve that is an upward sloping supply curve, and this is your original equilibrium. So original equilibrium, the price will be P and the quantity will be Q. And now what you will do is that you will basically shift the supply curve. So supply curve will shift towards the left, because supply is decreasing because of a drought. This supply curve will be named as S1. This will be P1, price will be P1, and the quantity will be Q1, and the price will basically increase. The price is increasing and the quantity traded is falling here. What is happening here is that the demand curve is contracting. It is not shifting, it is contracting because of the increase in price. So in my analysis, I need to write that a drought will decrease the output of coffee. The supply curve will shift towards the left. The price will rise and the quantity traded will fall. So quantity traded is going to fall. What is happening here is basically a drought is leading to a shortage in a crop in the crop of coffee. So drought is basically leading to a shortage, and because of the shortage, the price is rising, and therefore, because of the rise in price, the quantity demanded is also contracting. So, quantity demanded contracts because of the rising price. So, therefore, the quantity traded is falling in this case. So, you need to identify which curve you will shift, and drought will affect the supply of the output of coffee. And therefore, you need to shift the supply curve. This is not going to affect demand directly, but it is going to affect demand in a way that because supply will go down, there will be a shortage, therefore the price will rise, and because of the price rising, the demand will fall. And that's it for this part. So okay, so the next part here, that is part G, it is about it's a discuss type question. So whenever you're given a discuss type question, remember it's an argumentative, and it's also an essay length answer. So you need to basically give arguments for and against in discuss type questions. Also, you need to write in paragraphs. So you need to form proper paragraphs for discuss type questions. Also, what I tell my students normally is that they need to write all the supporting arguments first, and then use a word like however or on the other hand, and then write all the arguments which are against. So then basically you build your answer on arguments for and arguments against. In this particular question, they are saying discuss whether or not small firms benefit Nicaraguan consumers. So the first type of argument is that yes, they do benefit Nicaraguan consumers, and you need to give reasons for your answer. Uh, in this particular question, they have talked about small firms, and they have also said that Nicaraguan firms are small, and they have said that these firms often get to know their individual customers' requirements, but many are not large enough to benefit from economies of scale. So, this is an advantage that they can get to know their customers' requirements. So, you can write this as a supporting argument that yes, small firms do benefit their customers. Um, and in the negatives, in the arguments against, you need to write this, that they don't benefit from economies of scale, hence they can't pass down lower prices to consumers, because if they were benefiting from economies of scale, they would have passed down lower prices to consumers because of them also getting cost advantages. But because they are small, they are not getting cost advantages, so they cannot pass down cost advantages to their consumers. So I have written some points here for you guys. So part G, the points for the yes side, you need to say that they can get to know their customers' needs and wants. Uh, Small firms are very close to their customers, so they can also immediately respond to the customer's requirements. Small firms can provide customized services tailored to the needs of their customers. So if there is a business type which also, they have to make customized goods, so that basically needs to be small, so that they can be more close to their customers, and tailor make their goods and services according to the customer's needs and wants. Then you can say more small firms means, in they have mentioned in the question that Nicaragua has a lot of small coffee shops and a lot of small firms. Therefore, they will compete with each other, and they will compete with each other in terms of price. Also, they will compete with each other in terms of the quality of service and goods they are providing. So that means the customers have more choice. They have a lot of firms from which they can choose, basically pick and choose from a lot of firms, and prices may be low because of a lot of competition, and the quality may be high. On the other hand, you will say that because Nicaraguan firms are not benefiting from economies of scale, hence their consumers will have to pay higher prices. Because large firms benefit from economies of scale, that is, the cost advantages in terms of average cost. So when firms become large, their total cost is divided on a larger number of output, which means that their average cost falls. Because their average cost falls, um, they benefit from economies of scale, and because their cost is so low, they can also pass down lower prices to consumers. However, in this case, because firms are small, they cannot benefit from economies of scale, hence consumers will have to pay higher prices. Small firms make less output, hence they cannot cater to a larger audience. If suddenly the demand increases, they will not be able to increase the output very much because they are a small firm. Also, small firms, if it's a small coffee shop or something, and if they cannot cater all the customers at one time, the customers will have to go without consuming the product, which is not a very good thing in terms of the customer's point of view. And then small firms also do not have enough amount to invest in research and development. So there are firms which make huge profits, and then obviously they also reinvest in the business for research and development and come up with new product ideas and new innovations. However, small firms don't make that much profit that they invest in research and development and come up with new product ideas. So small firms will not have enough amount to reinvest and put it into research and development. So because that new ideas and new innovations and new products cannot be made, so the consumers will not get all those new products that can be made if the firms were large enough and if they made a lot of profit. So the last part of this question again is a discuss type question. You will observe this, that in all the data responses, the last two parts are discuss type questions. And here they're saying discuss whether or not Nicaragua should devote more of its resources to coffee production. In the last two lines of the data response, they mentioned that Nicaragua is the world's 12th largest producer of coffee. Global coffee consumption continues to increase. This trend may increase Nicaragua's coffee output and exports. So these are basically supporting arguments that you can use in your answer. Uh, because of Nicaragua being because of the global consumption of coffee increasing, Nicaragua can also focus more on producing coffee and exporting it to the whole world. In the supporting arguments, what I have written here is that coffee consumption is increasing, demand is increasing worldwide. Demand for coffee is also price inelastic because we did calculate the PED for coffee. And in case of price inelastic demand, what happens is that whenever the price rises, revenue increases. So what happens is that whenever the price rises, the demand is not affected very much. So what happens is that the total revenue increases because of that. And coffee also is a habit forming product. So once a consumer is on coffee and they have a habit of consuming coffee, they'll keep consuming coffee. So that basically uh, is a positive point for Nicaragua, because they will be able to make huge profits out of producing and selling coffee worldwide. Also, revenue will increase if the price increases. Like I just told you, that whenever PED is inelastic, whenever the price rises, the revenue increases. Then what Nicaragua also gets as a benefit is that it adds to the GDP of the country. So the total output of the country will increase because of focusing more on coffee. And already Nicaragua is an agricultural country. They focus more on agriculture, so they can produce more, coffee in a better way. This is like a better specialization as compared to Nicaragua, making something which they are not capable of making. So if they are good at agriculture, they can focus on producing coffee, and basically that's a good specialization for Nicaragua. Then what you can write is that because Nicaragua focuses on producing more coffee, that increases the output of the country, that increases the GDP of the country, and the employment of the country will also increase. There will be more people who will be employed in production of coffee. Also, exports will increase because coffee is demanded worldwide and the global consumption is increasing. So that means we can sell coffee to the whole world. And then what you can write is that also improves the current account of balance of payments, because more exports means that the current account of balance of payments will improve because of that. In the no side of the same question, you can say that devoting resources towards coffee will involve an opportunity cost, because the same resources that you're devoting towards coffee, you could have devoted that to the production of some other product and made more profit out of devoting those resources to some other product. Then on the no side, you can say that coffee is an agricultural product, and what we are dependent on is nature. So whenever it's an agricultural product, we are more dependent on the weather, for example, or the natural factors that affect um, affect the agricultural output. So in this case, we are dependent on natural factors of production. Also, drought can reduce the output of coffee. Similarly, earthquakes can reduce the output of coffee. And also, it can significantly affect our revenues and profits, because we are devoting a lot of resources towards the production of coffee. If there's a drought or if there is an earthquake, that is going to affect our revenues and profits. Also, the last thing is that if worldwide the consumption of coffee decreases, the demand for coffee decreases. And if there is a campaign worldwide to reduce the consumption of coffee, because coffee contains caffeine and coffee is a habit forming product, if it's a worldwide um, campaign to reduce the consumption of coffee, that will also reduce the world demand for coffee. And therefore what will happen is that um, coffee will not be sold then, and then the revenue will decrease, which you can write as an argument on the no side of this answer. So that's it for this data response. I hope this helps you guys.